Hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining for our webinar, which is titled How Network Security Contributes to Cyber Resilience. I'm Richa and I'll be your host for the day. Before we start, we would like to inform all our attendees the session will be last for 45 minutes, out of which last 15 minutes will be dedicated to Q&A. Requesting everyone to write your questions in the Q&A window. Should you need any assistance during the session, please use the chat box. Also, do note our criteria for certification is attend the complete webinar to become eligible, fill in the survey and give the right answer to the three questions based on the webinar. For our webinar today, we welcome our speaker Bogdan Carlescu, who has recently promoted to Product Marketing Director at Bitdefender. Heartiest congratulations to you, Bogdan.
Thank
Bogdan
you.
has an extensive international experience in various roles
Mm.
across the IT industry, including IT system integration, cybersecurity, sales engineering, and product management. He enjoys combining his engineering background with industry knowledge and business sense to fulfill his professional mission, helping businesses grow by leveraging technology. So, without any further ado, I would like to hand over the session to you, Bogdan.
Thank you, Richa, for the introduction. I'm honored to be your guest today and to share some thoughts around network security and its contribution to cyber resilience of the organizations. We will cover three key topics. The first one is what is actually cyber resilience and why it is important. And we will analyze this topic from two perspectives: the changes in the way businesses operate, and the second perspective is the evolving threat landscape. The second topic will be how to achieve or how to enhance cyber resilience through network security frameworks and network security technologies. And third, how network security integrates with other security elements. In this particular case, speaking of extended detection and response. And we will also do a little bit of real incident investigation using an XDR, or extended detection and response solution. So let's start by clarifying what cyber resilience is and why is it distinct from cybersecurity as a topic. And maybe even more important, which of the two is the best approach to the problem of cyber threats and the risks these are posing to business operations. Cybersecurity obviously is the more established term of the two and refers to people, technologies, processes that together serve as a line of defense against threats. Cybersecurity is centered on the idea that attacks can be prevented, and it creates a little bit of expectations that the organizations will be able to avoid being hit by attackers and will not suffer important cyber breaches. Now, although preventing breaches from happening is something everyone wants, 100% protection against this kind of threats is not achievable. And the recent years proved again and again that cyber threats are becoming increasingly sophisticated, and the organizations, as well as individuals, are affected in a direct or indirect manner. Now, opposite to the core idea of preventing breaches, cyber resilience is based on the principle that some attacks will go through and the organizations must prepare themselves to quickly and effectively deal with the consequences of these attacks. Cyber resilience basically represents the organization's ability to avoid, to prepare, to respond, and to recover after a cyber attack. Why is this important? Being ready to respond to security incidents enables organizations to mitigate the consequences of cyber breaches and quickly resume to a normal state of business operations. And this makes cyber resilience an integral part of the generic or the general business continuity planning. This is a hint on the superiority of the cyber resilience approach compared to cybersecurity when considered from visibility, I mean business level visibility, and larger context perspective. Now, are cyber resilience and cybersecurity fully distinct approaches, fully distinct topic? Not really. They do overlap quite a bit, actually more than it shows in this diagram. Both cybersecurity and cyber resilience have a common goal. They strive to limit the effects of cyber threats on businesses. They have in common some of the tools, some of the technologies, processes, and so on. So both of them are good objectives for organizations to focus on, but cyber resilience offers a holistic and a more realistic approach to defending the organization. And this is more important today than it was, let's say, a few years back. Now, before sharing my thoughts on the topic, I want to get your views on it. So we will run a quick poll with the following questions. What should organizations focus on to increase the ability to withstand cyber attacks? And I put here 4 options. Technical solutions that help prevent attacks, incident response tools, incident response processes, and security awareness at the entire organization level. Or maybe all these 3 together are important for organizations to focus on. So I'll give you a few seconds. It's not a complicated question. I'm sure many of you already know the answer, but let's make sure that we capture that in the poll. So let's wait a few seconds before getting the results of the poll. Richa, I think we can stop it already. I'm sure people managed to answer. So let's see what we have as answers. Can you read me?
Yes, I've already posted. People started replying too.
Let me see if I can see the post results. It's a little bit small for me. So as I was expected, we are dealing with an educated audience, and you are considering that all the above are important for increasing the capability of the organization to withstand a cyber attack. Now, there are 2 important perspectives that we should look at in relation to cyber resilience: the changes or the priorities in the enterprise, in the business environment, and the evolution of the threat landscape. So both sides of the story. Well, let's start with the enterprise priorities for 2021. The fact that businesses are increasingly dependent on IT infrastructure and digital in general is not a surprise. The pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, forced many businesses to even more increase their reliance on digital. And because of that, digitalization is in full speed in 2021. And it is expected that by 2022, 65% of the global GDP will be digitalized. And that means a staggering 6.8 trillion of IT spending between 2020 and 2023. Digitalization is not something that will stop once the global pandemic will end, but it is expected to continue to be strong beyond it. The second priority of 2021 is also kickstarted by the pandemic conditions, but will also continue beyond that. So many organizations that didn't believe in remote work before 2020 discovered the benefit of this approach and are planning to continue with a hybrid work setup beyond 2021. So technical parity, meaning that offering the same capabilities both remote and in the office, is one of the priorities for 2021 for many organizations. Digitalization and remote work are hand in hand with a strong shift toward cloud-centric infrastructure. This is not something new, but the trend is increasing. And in my personal opinion, the strongest contribution of COVID-19 pandemic was the forced removal of technology adoption barriers. As with remote work, the organization had to quickly adapt to a new normal, and that also created the opportunity to adopt even more cloud services. Right now, it is estimated that we are about 40% of IT spending is already dedicated to cloud resources, and it is expected to grow. The last 2021 priority that I want to touch today is related to the point I mentioned a bit earlier: cyber resilience as an integral part of business continuity planning. Due to the critical dependency of business on digital, the business leaders are looking to increase the resilience of their organization, of their businesses against unexpected cyber risks, and are starting to include cyber resilience and cybersecurity in general into the larger picture of business continuity planning. So the risk management framework that was used for business continuity planning in the previous years is changing and aligning to the digital transformation efforts in the organization. And it's good that they are focusing on risk, because the threat landscape is also changing. The risks, the threats are also evolving. So what are the highlights of the threat landscape? The work from home brought benefits for organizations, but also created new opportunities for threat actors. And we saw many attacks exploiting work from home setups in 2020, and this is expected to continue in 2021, especially advanced phishing attacks and attacks based on vulnerabilities and architectural weaknesses in this setup. The second highlight is related to ransomware, which is already an established foe. But the industry experts are expecting that the diversification and increased sophistication of ransomware will create additional security challenges in 2021 and beyond that. The third threat of the trend is related to the attacks on supply chains. We saw significant attacks in this of this kind in the last part of 2020, and threat actors will focus more and more on exploiting the trust relationships between entities. They will attack supply chain business partners to get access to bigger threats, to bigger targets, sorry. Now, in the last part of the presentation, we will see an example of an attack where a trusted partner is used as an attack vector. The last important highlight of 2021 is the increased adoption of a as-a-service business model in the cybercrime. This model enables individuals and entities with limited or even no technical skills to carry on advanced attacks by leveraging services offered by sophisticated malicious actors. So I'm expecting to see cybercrime as a service reaching new heights in 2021. Now, given this context, given these evolutions, both in the businesses and in the threats landscape, the important question that we have to ask today is, how can organizations continue on their mission, on their business, without having their operations being halted by aggressive actions? What are the steps, the practical steps an organization should take to improve cyber resilience? Now, the comprehensive path to enhance cyber resilience is to go through a cybersecurity program that addresses 4 or 5 key phases: prepare, protect, detect, respond, and recover from an attack. These are the phases as they are defined by the NIST cybersecurity framework, but equally effective is the adaptive security framework, which compresses things a little bit into 4 phases: protect, detect, respond, and predict. When these frameworks are implemented thoroughly, they will enable the organization to enhance the capacity to sustain operations throughout a cyber attack, and also minimize the disruption and the reputational harm that these attacks can bring with them. A critical element that needs to be stated from the beginning is that both approaches, or actually any approach to cyber resilience, should be holistic. It should involve all the resources used, all the resources available to the organization, and that means endpoints and endpoint security, cloud resources and cloud security, network, IoT devices, and network security. An integrated approach is far superior, as we will see in the last part of the presentation. But as each element of, let's say, the technical ecosystem has its own contribution, we will look today at 4 key network security technologies and how they are contributing to the overall resilience of the organization and different phases of the cybersecurity framework. So we will look at vulnerability assessment, firewall, network segmentation, and network traffic analytics. So let's take them one by one. The vulnerability assessment maps to the prepare phase of the framework, which is identify in the NIST framework and is predict in the adaptive network security framework. The objective of this phase is to develop an organizational understanding of the cyber risks that are affecting systems, people, assets, data, and so on. And an instrument that is doing vulnerability assessment will help to review and to analyze endpoint and network devices for security issues. This assessment is intended to detect flaws, to detect vulnerabilities in the network and in the devices that could create opportunities for malicious actors to exploit. As you may know, there are multiple types of vulnerability assessments: network-based scanners, host-based scanners, wireless scanners, application scanners, whatever, all kind of tools that are scanning or analyzing various types of elements. The value of any of this is to, in improving resilience, in the context of resilience, as I mentioned above, is to enable the understanding of which resources are vulnerable to cyber risks. Now, of course, knowledge alone will not help too much. So the identified vulnerabilities must be addressed through actions like patching or configuration changes. So now let's move to the next phase, to the protect phase. The protect function is designed to support, to enable the ability to detect, to protect from, and to contain the impact of potential cybersecurity events. And we have many technologies that bring value to this group, but today I will cover only 2 of them. The first one, the well-known firewall, and network segmentation / network isolation. An important characteristic of the technologies in this particular group is the high degree of automation. Firewalls are no exception from this principle. And that's true even if we talk about a dedicated device or a software component of an operating system. Automation is very important for cyber resilience because the automatic protection capabilities are key elements of the ecosystem that are blocking the vast majority of threats, both common and advanced, before they reach the systems. Now, a funny thing about prevention, or maybe not so funny, but it's let's say an interesting connection. There is a department store in Bucharest that since the pandemic started are running an audio message from time to time in their store. So when I do shopping, I hear this almost every time. And the message is, prevention is the responsible choice. Now, of course, this is about healthcare in their case, but it is not about health only. By using prevention capability, we are limiting the number of incidents that will occur. And that promotes both the efficiency and the effectiveness of the entire security architecture. The next technology that I put on the list is network segmentation. And this one belongs to the Protect cluster too, but it has a slightly different focus compared to the firewall. The most important contribution of the network segmentation from resilience perspective is the containment of the impact in case of a cybersecurity incident. By splitting a larger area, a larger network into smaller or even micro areas, this acts as a very effective way of limiting the access to resources that are connected to the network, and that is increasing the resilience of the organization in case of a breach. Now, network segmentation is never used by itself. It's always used in conjunction with other security technologies, like the previous mentioned firewall. There is another angle to the network segmentation, to network isolation, and that is related to active response to security incidents. But I will come back to this in a bit. Before having to or dealing with a threat, we need to detect it. So let's move to the detect phase, which the goal is to timely discover the cybersecurity events and also to identify the root cause if possible. The ability to view, the ability to analyze in real time any suspicious activity that affects endpoints or digital resources is critical, because it helps the security teams to identify sophisticated adversaries before the attacks spread laterally in the network, affecting other endpoints. The network traffic analytics is one of the more recent and highly useful technology that contributes to the advanced threat detection. As this is newer, I will explain it a little bit. So how does it work? The network elements in the environment, like routers, switches, firewalls, must be configured to send a copy of the traffic to a virtual or physical device that is called a network probe. The number of these probes depend on the specific IT infrastructure, but the important thing is to ensure that a copy of all network traffic, or all relevant network traffic, let's say, is sent to these probes. Because if elements of the relevant network flows is not sent into the system, then visibility is affected, and chances appear that malicious actions may occur without being detected. Now, what are the network probes doing? It's a pretty simple but important step. They are extracting the metadata information from the network flows, and that means source data, protocols, etc., but no content in itself. This data, this metadata, is then sent to a central location where it is usually analyzed with machine learning and behavioral analytics in order to detect advanced threats in real time. Besides this metadata analytics, some solutions also have the capability to do deep packet inspection, and that helps further increasing the effectiveness and accuracy of detection. Now, network analytics is one of my favorite technologies because it brings two important advantages to a security architecture. First, it is very trustworthy as a source of information. The network traffic is more difficult to be tampered by an attacker compared to an endpoint, for example. And that's why some people in the industry are calling the network traffic the source of truth. The second advantage of network traffic analytics is it can cover any device that is connected to the network, no matter the type, no matter if it supports an agent or not. So it's very, very useful, especially in the IoT scenarios. As we will see later, this technology, network traffic analytics, works very well in conjunction with agent-based technologies like endpoint detection and response. And this combination between EDR, endpoint detection and response, and NTA, network traffic analytics, is a really powerful one. Now, I'm getting close to the last phase of the cybersecurity framework, which is the incident response phase. Now, I said last, but last is not actually a very good term, because all the frameworks, NIST, Security Adaptive Framework, they are circles. The idea is of continuous security process. And from the response phase, organizations should feed back into prepare and further enhance their security posture. Now, on the response phase itself, this is focused on containing the impact of cybersecurity incidents and on recovery of normal business operations. I mentioned network isolation before as part of the protect phase. Isolation is a concept that is very useful also in response, but here we talk about quickly isolating the affected areas or affected endpoints to contain the attack and then proceed to eliminating the attack artifacts. Isolation or quarantine, or as it is also called, is the first action that typically incident responders must take. Usually, this recovery effort, even if it includes sometimes some automatic components, it heavily relies on intense work from security operations and also from IT operations team. So in the case of incident response, clear plans, clear responsibilities are very, very important. As in crisis mode, as we know, usually people act a little bit erratically. So they need to know exactly what they need to do. Now, with the response phase, we are concluding the review of the cybersecurity frameworks. I am emphasizing that this is a very fast pass-through. It's worth spending a lot more time in understanding these frameworks and understanding the details beyond that. Now, so up to now, we covered the first 2 points on the agenda. So why is cyber resilience important? And also we saw how we can use the frameworks and network security technologies to enhance cyber resilience. We are now entering the last part of the session, and that is related to how the network security integrates with other security elements. And in our case, we will speak about extended detection and response, which is a type of integrated security solution, and how we can use an XDR solution to investigate security incidents. Some of you might be already familiar with XDR, some of you might not. So before anything else, I would like to make sure that we are all on the same page with what XDR is. For those of you that are well aware of the concept, please hang on, I will be brief. Now, in general, things tend to be complicated in cybersecurity, and I very much like to simplify things whenever possible. So I was looking for a best way to describe XDR, and I think I found one. So let's say this is your dream house. I am sure that for your dream house, you will consider some security elements. Of course, you will have fences as seen in the diagram, but you may also want to add a security surveillance camera at the main gate. Maybe you want to add a motion sensor in front of the house. Maybe you want to add a smart lock on the front door. The great things about all these security elements is that they can alert you when something out of the ordinary is happening. For example, someone getting through the gate, or walking on the yard when nobody should be at home, or trying to guess the entry pin for the main door. This is the scenario that we do want to know about, and the reason for us to install all this stuff in our home. But what if we live close to a school and you get alerts each time a kid is getting too close to your gate? Or if you get alerted each time your neighbor's cat walks on your yard, or each time your kids forget the entry pin. You will very soon get tired of looking through alerts, and you will start to wonder if it was really a good idea to install all these elements in your home. What you actually want is a system that is able to connect multiple events, like getting close to the gate, then walking on the alley, then entering the pins on the door. This is an example of a scenario that you would like to be warned about quickly and accurately. Now, if we transpose this to the cyber world, we have exactly the same scenario. Organizations tend to employ a wide range of security tools to do various jobs in their security architecture. Security for applications like email, security for networks, for network connected devices, or for traditional endpoints, or for cloud and so on. All the solutions are great in themselves, but due to their limited coverage, they provide security alerts on their own, and they are typically overloading the security teams. And due to the alert fatigue, only a small fraction of the security alerts is checked by actually checked by people. I think the percentage is somewhere globally is somewhere at 25%. The rest is never seen by a human. This usually leads to serious security consequences. Now, here is where XDR comes to help. The promise of this solution is to incorporate multiple solutions or data from multiple solutions, from multiple sensors, and provide one single incident view that covers all affected elements. The most important source for XDR is the endpoint, because usually XDR grew on top of EDR. But it includes network, it includes email, it includes cloud. XDR changes the focus from elements, from infrastructure elements, to the attack itself. That's why we are saying that XDR is an attack-centered solution. That might seem a little bit similar to SIEM, but it is not. I don't have the time now to dive into that. But yeah, you can look for that for details on that on the web. So what is the promise of XDR? Well, it's obviously threat detection. It's a unified view on security incidents, is investigation capabilities and response capabilities. All this in one single platform. Now, I know the theory is rather dry, so I suggest to see how an XDR solution looks like and how we can use it to investigate a security incident. So let's put our security analyst hats on and let's do a little bit of detective work. We can assume that this is the Thursday morning, a usual Thursday morning. You had your coffee or you had your tea, and now you log into the XDR console. Now, for the sake of saving time today, I decided to use screenshots instead of going into the console itself, which would take a little longer. So once you log in, you will get a screen showing you an incidents view. I used in this case Bitdefender Gravity Zone platform. I decided to use this one because I am familiar with it. The principles of what I'm sharing today applies to every platform of this kind, though the details of the platform and the details that the platform can offer vary from solution to solution and from sensor to sensor. Now, looking at the screenshot, we can observe that we are on the extended incidents tab. And that means this particular incident we are looking at affected a larger portion of the organization. We can see that the confidence score, there's a red dot there. The confidence score is 90. That means the platform has a high degree of confidence, 100 being maximum, that we are dealing with a serious threat. Now, for this type of incident, you will usually get an alert in the middle of the night if it occurs. Now, we are seeing also an important clue from the beginning. We are dealing with data exfiltration. Now, if we click on the incidents, details start to appear. This is the graphical view of the incident, and we can easily see that 4 devices from within the organizations were involved, and 1 device or 1 IP address from outside the premises was involved in the incident. On the left side of the screen, we are seeing the details step of the attack. So everything was recorded in the platform. All the data from multiple sources were put together for us to have one single view on what happened on multiple, let's say, areas of the environment. Any good solution needs to give you that. Now, to get to the bottom of the incident, we need to start analyzing the steps that were made by the attacker. I mentioned previously that the combination between EDR, endpoint detection and response, and NTA, network traffic analytics, is a very powerful one. Both technologies are embedded in this XDR platform, and as you can see on the screenshot, they both provide insights that will help us to quickly identify what happened. If you are wondering what NTSA is, there is an additional S to NTA, and that is coming from network traffic security analytics. It's let's say a different naming for the same thing, network traffic analytics. Now, let's continue with our investigation. If we click on the very first step, we can see that one of the endpoints is used to exploit a known vulnerability on a second endpoint. This vulnerability is called Zero Logon, and you can find more details about it online. You just have to search for it. But for a bit of context, Zero Logon exploits a cryptographic flaw in the Microsoft's Active Directory NetLogon remote protocol. And this vulnerability allows an attacker to breach a domain controller. I'm not getting into the details on how this is done, but it is possible. And this is very bad. Now, the first question that comes into my mind is why this scenario was possible. Why did, let's say, a malicious person had access to the domain controller? Because you need to have direct access to it so you can exploit the vulnerability. Are we dealing with a malicious insider? Are we dealing with an attacker that got physical access to the corporate network? We don't know yet, but we will see the answer as we move through the let's say investigation. Now, you can also see on the left side that this detection was based on the NTA sensor, meaning we detected at network level that this let's say exploit happened. Now, what happened next? The attacker used the domain controller to move laterally in the network and affected two other endpoints. And we can actually see that it was a two-step process. And this is not a coincidence. When we get to the whole picture of the attack, you will understand why this happened. Now, in order to finish in time, I have to skip some details, but I will get directly to, let's say, the most interesting parts of this incident. So the next step we are looking at is a detection that was made by the EDR platform or the EDR sensor, and that means that it brings us more visibility on what's happening inside the endpoint. It's not visibility from the network level, but from within the endpoint. The severity of this step, of this let's say part of the attack, is high, and we can see that it was detected by a network defense component of the endpoint. And this module detected that a lateral movement happened, and specifically, it detected that a PowerShell command was executed. Why is this possible? Well, it is possible because the domain controller was previously breached, and that allowed the attacker to impersonate an administrator. Finally, now we are getting to the really critical step of this attack, where the data is exfiltrated from the fourth endpoint. Now, as you can see in the details, this seems to be the workstation or the laptop of the COO, the Chief Operating Officer. Now, you can imagine that there are pretty juicy data on that machine that is used by this high-ranked executive. If we click on the details, we can see some interesting elements. First, that this is the last step of the kill chain. In many cases, this is data exfiltration. We can also see the technique that was used to exfiltrate data, and that's automated exfiltration. It's a technique that was identified as being used during DTAC. We can also see there that we have some recommended future steps that the organization could do in order to limit the damage and improve the security posture. I will come back to that, but first I want to reveal you the full picture of the attack, so you don't remain curious of what happened here. If you would have read all the details of the security incident and you correlate this to knowledge from your, let's say, other type of data in your organization, like the organization structure, you would get to this picture. An outsider managed to compromise one of the supply partners of the organization in order to get access to the organization's Wi-Fi, impersonating a partner employee. It uses the zero logon exploit to compromise the domain controller, and then it uses the domain controller to further identify and attack the COO's assistant laptop, Amanda in this case. Then it uses data on the Amanda's laptop to quickly identify the COO and the corresponding machine, and then moved laterally from Amanda's laptop to the COO laptop, from where the attacker exfiltrated confidential information to an external server. Now, obviously, this is a lab scenario, but my colleagues from the Defender Investigations team have seen this scenario in real life in quite a couple of times. Of course, with slight differences regarding how the network was accessed, what vulnerabilities was used, but this is a scenario that keeps repeating itself, unfortunately. So what went wrong in this case? And more important, what the organization can do or should do actually to improve their resilience. This is important because detecting alone is never enough. Action is required to close the gaps and to improve the security posture. So there are three things that we can quickly observe here. Multiple things can be observed, but three are critical. First, we have an issue with authorizing third-party people on the physical premises of the organization. And we also have issues in providing them with too much access in the corporate environment. Well, this is not a general rule. Sometimes, for example, service partner, managed service partner need to have access to deeper in the network, but generally partners should not get easy to the domain controller. Second problem, even bigger than this one. The domain controller had a known vulnerability which was unpatched. I know that patching is never easy. It creates risk in itself, and that's why this type of delaying patching often happens. Actually, it happens more often than you think. In reality, it is estimated that over 90% of total breaches are happening due to a known unpatched vulnerability. And the third problem is and this unusual behavior or let's say pattern of actions in the network were not blocked timely. This could have happened by using automatic layers, could have been used manual intervention to block them, but they should have been blocked. This is not an incident that happens in 5 minutes. Typically takes longer. And yeah, I personally know cases where organizations were breached because they did not check timely the alerts in the security systems. So the alerts were there, the threat was detected, but no action was taken. So this is the third problem here. And this brings me back to the poll questions and to closer to the end of this session. What should an organization focus on to increase the ability to withstand cyber attacks? We talked about technology a lot today, but this is never enough. Processes needs to be in place. The right people needs to be in place. The general staff of the organization needs to be aware of cybersecurity risks. All of these are critical elements of the security architecture, and they work together to enhance the resilience of the organization against cyber threats. Now, with that, I'm closing the session. We've covered three main points. We looked on the cyber resilience, what it is and why it is important. We saw how we can enhance it by using network security technologies and frameworks. And third, we also look on how we can integrate network security with other security elements for increasing the resilience of the organization. And that was using extended detection and response as a tool to exemplify this. This is it. Richa, back to you. Let's see if we have questions that I can answer.
Right, right. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. And we would like to thank our speaker, Bogdan. It was surely an enlightening session. The poll question is now open for the attendees. And before we take questions, I would like to inform all the attendees that this session is in sync with the EC Council product CND. CND product of EC Council maps to many roles in the industry like network security engineer, network security administrator, network security analyst, network security architect, network defense technician, security operator, etc. Anyone with a CND certificate is eligible for 1,35,000 plus job vacancies globally with an average salary of $85,613 per annum. And if you're interested to know more, kindly take part in the poll and let us know your preferred mode of training, and we'll reach out to you. Now, Bogdan, we'll take some questions for you. So the first question uh, for you, we have, in your example, you had an attacker impersonating a business partner. How can these situations be avoided?
Well, this is a very good question, and it's a hard one to answer, actually. The supply chain attacks are some of the attacks the most difficult to let's say counter. For this particular case, when we talk of someone impersonating, coming to the premises of a partner and pretending being someone else, usually cross-check is the best way to do. So whenever someone is expected to come to do some maybe sensitive work, or for business meetings, we'll not do that. But when someone comes to do sensitive work in the organization, it is better to use a cross-check to see what's the identity of the person, to see what are, let's say, the physical appearance of that person. So no one can, let's say, pretend being an employee of, I don't know, whatever supply partner or service partner and coming into the environment and do damage. Now, this kind of attacks can involve, as we saw, people directly, but can involve other types of elements, like, I don't know, malicious code that is included within the different products. Well, this is hard to counter. So it is important to know that to check that the business partners are doing their due diligence, are respecting known best practices from development perspective. If we are talking about various applications. So there are tools that are allowing us as let's say security professionals to reduce the risk on their organization. Bringing the risk to zero, that's an illusion. It's impossible to achieve, but minimizing the risk, that's possible. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your answer, Bogdan. The second question which we have is, does working remotely via a VPN also exposes an organization workstation to any threat?
Working through VPN is a good practice, and it helps let's say, reducing a good portion of the risks of working remotely, but not all of them. When an endpoint is let's say mobile and reaches I don't know, places that you don't control, networks that you don't control, there is a higher degree of risk that that particular device is exposed to. So that's why it's important to have a very good visibility on what type of let's say action and behaviors are happening with these devices. So using the VPN is good. We should use it, but there are other things to consider, including how the VPN is configured. To give you an example, you can have a split VPN that allows you to connect directly through VPN to the corporate environment and directly to the internet. Now, when you connect directly to the internet without having, I don't know, additional security layers from the organization before or in front of your device, the device is exposed, and it can be, let's say, the target of an attack. So there is no right or wrong. Definitely, we should use all these technologies, but we need to think beyond. VPN is never enough to consider that the device is safe and the organization is not exposed.
Thank you, Bogdan, for your answer. So the next question we have is, how does XDR handle encrypted connections?
Virad, this is a longer discussion. The advantage of XDR in particular is employing both network-based and endpoint-based security. Depends now regarding the question, depends this encrypted traffic, where is it starting and where is it ending? If it's initiated from the endpoint, then even if, let's say, the network traffic security cannot look into the content, you can identify if a threat is coming through that let's say encrypted connection when it reaches the endpoint. So you're relying on the endpoint detection capabilities for this type of scenario. Now, if the traffic is between two devices, or it includes a device that is not protected by an agent, then the situation is a little bit more complicated. You could do deep packet inspection and and that implies decrypting the traffic, but that's not always possible. But you can do another thing. One good indicator that the traffic is related to something unusual or malicious is to look on the traffic patterns. Usually in the traffic patterns, you can read if something is out of the ordinary, if a device is starting to communicate with endpoints that it shouldn't communicate with. For example, in our case, why should you have a direct connection from Amanda's computer to the CEO, even if she is the assistant? Typically, you don't need to have this type of a behavior. Or when the CEO device started to communicate and send data to let's say an IP address which it had never connections to before. So you can look from the outside to the patterns and identify some or let's say some changes or some behaviors that can lead to identifying a threat.
Thank you, Bogdan, for your answer. One more question. What part does an AI play into an EDR solution? Meaning, are there already systems that are able to learn by themselves?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes. What part does an AI play into an EDR solution? Meaning,
Yep.
are there already systems that are able to learn by themselves?
AI is used in defense since many years. I think 10, even more than 10 years. specifically machine learning capabilities, which is a class of AI technologies. Now, when you say machines that are able to learn on themselves, I hope you don't think of something from the class, from the movies, let's say. This type of technologies is, I think, not yet available, at least not for the masses. But what we are using AI and machine learning for in EDR is for discovering let's say behaviors that belongs to attacks that are not known. So in an EDR or in security in general, we use layers of let's say of technologies. We easily recognize attacks that we've seen before, so we can easily detect those. But there are situations where we cannot let's say connect some actions with an attack that it is known, but there are hints in the behavior of let's say in those behaviors that something is unusual. So we are using machine learning to learn how an attack looks like and identify new attacks by looking at elements. For example, we are using also to give you another example. This was one. Another one is we are using machine learning AI to make sense of data. For example, an EDR solution is collecting a lot of data from the endpoints and from the environment. It's not possible for a human to work with so much data in real time. So you need systems that are able to analyze, to parse this information, to cluster it, to find trends in the information that will help the human analyst to identify that something is wrong quicker. So there are many use cases around machine learning. In a sense, yes, the algorithms, the machines are learning various things by themselves or added by humans.
Thank you, Bogdan. I think we'll take two more questions. What about HTTP scanning or SSL deep scanning? Does it make sense to you to implement this, or is this the risk too big by breaking SSL in order to scan it?
This is a question, an easy question with a complicated answer. Deep packet inspection, even for encrypted traffic, is necessary sometimes, and it is used, but not all the time. So in some scenarios, data needs to be decrypted to analyze if something is let's say malicious inside those connections. In other cases, it is not required. So I cannot say yes, a definite yes or definite no. It's a maybe, depends on the case.
Thank you, Bogdan, for your answer. The last question. Out of the elements that support cyber resilience, which one is the important?
Well, I think this is this is a good question. I try to answer to ask the same question with the poll, and it's a good question because we always need to think broadly when we think of resilience, and it's difficult to say if technology is more important than people or more important than processes. I think, and from experience, all of this are very, very important. So if you have the technology but you don't have the people to operate it, you will miss some parts or some capabilities from the technology. Technology is able to do some things on its own, but not everything. So you need people. If you have the people but you don't have the processes, then people will not act in the most effective or efficient way. So they are interconnected, and from my experience and from what I know from analysts and from interactions with other organizations, all of this are really important and needs to be considered since the beginning. The weight of each element depends on the organization, but all of them needs to be considered.
Thank you, Bogdan. Uh, and thank you everyone for attending today's webinar, How Network Security Contributes to Cyber Resilience. For all the attendees who have joined us late, our criteria for certification is to attend the complete webinar, to become eligible and fill in the survey presentation and give the right answer to the 3 questions of the webinar. And we would appreciate it if you could complete that and provide us the feedback. And on behalf of CyberTalks and a presenter, thank you for joining us today and have a great rest of your day. And thank you, Bogdan, for your presence. It was indeed an amazing session. And we have got very good response. Probably we'll share it with you after the event is over.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Now you all can end the webinar. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.